I've been exploring abandoned places since I was 15 years old. There's something about forgotten spaces that pulls me in. The silence, the decay, the feeling that you're standing somewhere time forgot. I've crawled through collapsed factories, walked the halls of shuttered asylums, and climbed rusted fire escapes to reach rooftops that haven't seen footsteps in decades. I thought I'd seen it all. I thought nothing could really get to me anymore. I was wrong. I need to tell someone what happened to me. I've tried telling my friends, but they don't believe me. They think I'm exaggerating or that I saw a homeless person and my imagination filled in the rest. But I know what I saw, and I know that I barely made it out alive. Last fall, my friend Derek told me about a storm drain system on the edge of town. He said it was massive, a network of concrete tunnels that stretched for miles beneath the industrial district. The area above ground had been abandoned for years. Old warehouses, a defunct chemical plant, and acres of cracked parking lots overtaken by weeds. Derek had found the entrance on Google Earth, a large circular opening where a drainage canal met a concrete retaining wall. He wanted to go together, but I told him I preferred exploring alone. That was always my thing. Other people made noise, got nervous, wanted to leave too soon. When I was by myself, I could take my time. I could listen to the silence and really absorb the atmosphere. Derek understood. He knew me well enough not to push it. The morning I went was overcast and cold. Early November, the kind of day where the sky is just a flat gray ceiling. I parked my car behind an abandoned trucking depot about a quarter-mile from the entrance. I wore my usual gear: waterproof boots, thick jeans, a headlamp, and a backup flashlight in my jacket pocket. I also brought a small backpack with water, a granola bar, and my phone. I always kept my phone on airplane mode during explores to save battery, but I liked having it for photos. The walk to the drain entrance took about 10 minutes. I had to cross an overgrown field and duck under a chain-link fence that had been cut open years ago. When I reached the retaining wall, I saw the opening. It was about 8 feet in diameter, a perfect circle of darkness set into gray concrete. Water trickled out from the bottom, maybe an inch deep, flowing into the canal below. I clicked on my headlamp and stepped inside. The transition from daylight to darkness was immediate. Even with my headlamp, the darkness felt thick, like it was pressing against the edges of my light. The air was noticeably colder inside with that familiar underground smell. Damp concrete, rust, and something organic I couldn't identify. The first 100 feet were unremarkable. Smooth concrete walls, the echo of my footsteps, the smell of stagnant water. The tunnel curved slightly to the left, and I followed it, splashing through the shallow stream. Every 20 feet or so, smaller pipes fed into the main tunnel from above, some dripping, others dry. After about 10 minutes of walking, I reached a junction. The main tunnel continued straight, but a smaller passage branched off to the right. It was maybe 5 feet tall, forcing me to crouch. Something about it caught my attention. There was graffiti on the walls of the main tunnel, spray-painted tags and crude drawings. But the smaller passage was clean. No graffiti, no trash. Like no one ever went down there. I chose the smaller passage. Crouching for that long was uncomfortable, but I pushed through. The tunnel narrowed further, and I had to duck walk with my hands occasionally touching the walls. The concrete here was older, stained with mineral deposits and patches of black mold. The air grew colder and carried a strange smell. Something organic, something wrong. After what felt like 15 minutes, the passage opened into a larger chamber. I stood up straight and stretched my back, my spine popping from being hunched over for so long. I shined my light around. The chamber was maybe 30 feet across with a domed ceiling about 12 feet high. The walls were covered in mineral stains, white and orange streaks running down from cracks in the concrete. 3 other tunnels fed into it from different directions, each one disappearing into darkness. In the center of the floor was a metal grate covering what looked like a deeper shaft. I walked toward the grate and looked down. My light couldn't reach the bottom. Just black. Endless black. I picked up a small piece of concrete rubble and dropped it through the grate. I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then a distant splash. Deep. Really deep. That's when I noticed the smell was stronger here, and there was something else. A sound. Faint, rhythmic, almost like breathing. I held my breath and listened. It was coming from one of the other tunnels, the one directly across from where I'd entered. I should have left. Every instinct told me to turn around and go back the way I came. But curiosity is a powerful thing. It's the same thing that drove me into all those abandoned buildings in the first place. The need to know. The need to see. I walked toward the sound. The tunnel was wider than the one I'd come through, tall enough to stand in. The breathing sound grew louder as I walked. It wasn't quite breathing, I realized. It was more like a wet, rasping wheeze, like someone with fluid in their lungs struggling for air. Then I saw something on the ground. It was a shoe, a single running shoe, relatively new, lying on its side in the shallow water. A few feet beyond it was a sock, then a shirt, torn and crumpled against the wall. My heart started pounding. I swept my light across the tunnel ahead and saw more items scattered along the floor. Another shoe, a backpack with its contents spilled out, water bottles, protein bars, a small flashlight. A cell phone, face down in the water, screen cracked. And then, about 50 feet ahead, I saw a shape. It was hunched against the wall, motionless, human-sized but wrong somehow. The proportions were off. The limbs were too long, folded at unnatural angles like a spider at rest. The skin had a wet sheen to it. I couldn't tell if it was facing toward me or away. The wheezing sound was coming from it. I stood frozen. My light was fixed on the shape. The wheezing continued, steady and wet. Part of me wanted to believe it was a person, someone hurt. But every part of me knew that wasn't true. Something deep and primal in my brain was screaming at me to run. Then it shifted, just slightly. A small adjustment, like someone settling into a more comfortable position. And as it moved, I saw its face turn toward me. Except it wasn't a face. Not really. It was pale, almost gray, with features that seemed melted or unfinished. There were dark hollows where eyes should have been, and the mouth was wrong, too wide, too low on the face. It saw me. For a split second, we were both still. Then it made a sound. Not the wheezing. Something else. A clicking noise, sharp and rapid, like bones snapping together. I ran. I don't remember making the decision to run. My body just moved. Fight or flight kicked in, and flight won by a landslide. I sprinted back through the tunnel, back into the dome chamber, my headlamp bouncing wildly and casting crazy shadows on the walls. I could hear something behind me. That clicking sound, sharp and rapid, echoing off the concrete. And something else. A wet, slapping sound against the floor, like raw meat being thrown against stone. I dove into the passage I'd originally come through, the narrow one. I moved as fast as I could, practically crab-walking, banging my head and shoulders against the tunnel walls. I could feel warm blood running down my forehead from where I'd cracked my skull against the concrete. I didn't care. I just needed to get out. The sound behind me grew louder, closer. The clicking seemed like it was right at my heels. The wet slapping echoed in the confined space, mixing with my own panicked breathing. I burst out into the main tunnel and ran toward the entrance. The light from outside was visible ahead, a gray circle of daylight. The most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I pushed harder, my boots splashing through the water, my lungs burning. I could still hear it behind me, getting closer. I exploded out of the drain opening and didn't stop. I scrambled up the canal bank, tearing my hands on the rough concrete. I ran across the field toward my car, legs burning, vision starting to tunnel. I didn't look back. Not once. I was too afraid of what I might see. When I reached my car, I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so bad I could barely fit the key in the lock. I got inside, slammed the door, and locked it. I sat there for a long time, maybe an hour, just shaking, trying to catch my breath, trying to convince myself I was safe. My headlamp was gone. My hands were bleeding from the climb. There was dried blood on my forehead. My jeans were soaked and covered in something that smelled like rot. I looked toward the drain entrance. It was just a dark circle in the distance. Nothing came out of it. I waited, watching, expecting to see something emerge, but the entrance just sat there, dark and silent. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what I'd seen. The shape, the face that wasn't a face, the clicking sound. I tried to convince myself it was a homeless person, someone with a medical condition, someone wearing a mask to scare explorers. But I knew what I saw, and I knew how it moved. No person moves like that. I searched online for any reports of disappearances in that area. I found a local news article from 2 years ago about a teenage girl who went missing while exploring the industrial district. She had told her friends she was going to check out the storm drains. They waited at the entrance. She never came back. I think about that scattered clothing in the tunnel, the backpack, the phone face down in the water. I think about who those things belong to and what their last moments must have been like. I've stopped exploring abandoned places completely. The curiosity that used to drive me is gone, replaced by the knowledge that some places are abandoned for a reason. Some spaces are forgotten because they should be, and some things in the dark don't want to be found. They want to find you. I still have nightmares about it. That face, those empty hollows where eyes should be, that too wide mouth, the clicking sound. I wake up in cold sweats, convinced I can hear it in my apartment somewhere in the walls, waiting. Derek still asks me to go exploring with him sometimes. I always say no. He doesn't understand why I quit. I've never told him the full story. How do you explain something like that to someone? You can't. All you can do is hope they never find out for themselves.